Hi everyone, today I'm going to be doing 4 looks using the Morphe and Pony collaboration Constellation Sky. At first look, this palette is absolutely beautiful. While I think we all can definitely hypothesize that this was definitely gonna be a real big nice fat chunk of change for Pony and Morphe's pockets, I think a lot of us can also agree that this collaboration, the color scheme, the layout, and the artistry behind the design and the concept was very well done. This really feels so on brand for Pony. It definitely does not feel like she just put her name on the front. It really feels like she did do a lot of thought into the design and the overall visual concept. So I don't really think this feels like a cash grab. I definitely felt like I really was taking home with me a piece of artwork from Pony herself, and you know, she did used to be a graphic designer. She does have that artist background. The shade names are also really cute. The names for cats are in here, and the shades overall scream Pony most definitely. So all that is to say, that makes me really bummed that this was with Morphe. If this color scheme had been with ColourPop, for example, I would have been absolutely over the moon. As it is, the color layout, the visual concept, the visual design, the packaging, the imprints on the shadow pans, all of that just makes me bitter that we get Morphe shadows out of this, because as you can see, while the shadows are not disagreeable, they are just so average and so boring, especially the shimmers. I have never really found Morphe shimmers to look anything special on me. They look so cheap and generic. I know you can't necessarily compare the lower pricing of Morphe to like Natasha Denona or something, but even compared to like some of ColourPop's better quality shimmers, it is just such a letdown. So yeah, I just am really bummed that this was with Morphe, because everything about this would have been so beautiful that it would have been even better if it had been literally any other brand that she had chosen to collab with. Now, she did mention the larger shades in the center can be used on the face, so here I'm using that really pale pink on my face. It just barely shows up on my skin tone, but you can see it as a really soft effect that I think is what she was probably going for. And then here I'm going to be using one of the larger pan shades as a highlight, which again is also something she did. You can see it's really pretty. Overall, the effect is super subtle. As a blush, that pink shade is actually really nice, so I could totally see myself using the other eyeshadow pans as blushes if I could like actually get my brush into them. But yeah, this is the lipstick I used. I wanted it to be a little bit more on the cool pink side to match with the eye look. It's fine. You know, it's fine. There's really very little I can say about it that sucks, but there's so much potential for how good this could have been if she had collabed with literally ColourPop. I mean, I think this would have been better being a mega palette with ColourPop, because you know, ColourPop recently started doing mega palettes. If this had been a ColourPop mega palette, I think I would have lost my mind. So yeah, get it if you want. I don't regret having it, and you know, it'll probably go on sale in the future. It doesn't seem to be super limited like the MAC one was. It didn't sell out in like 10 seconds or anything like that, so I think if you guys wanted to wait for it, you could absolutely get this on sale a few months down the road, and then you can have it for an even more affordable price. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. The browns, as you can see here, are fine. The browns actually perform really well. I find most brands from low prices to high prices, really you can't mess up a brown. So as you can see, this look looks fine. All of my looks today are on the more subtle side, as is reflective of this palette and of her makeup style. I kind of wanted to stick with stuff that was a little bit more soft, but yeah. Some of the shades in here are kind of squishy, so not this one. You can see the shimmer here. It feels so powdery and almost ashy. Very little shine, so, and it's not even twinkly like a Korean shimmer is, so you don't even get that either. But yeah, it's fine. You can see how they show up, but at the same time, it's just so forgettable, the finish of the shimmers. I did not wet my brush for any of these. I definitely will try wetting my brush. I feel like I've seen other people, especially people who receive a lot of Morphe PR, do videos or posts where they use Morphe shimmers and they look way better. I wonder if they're just wetting their brush, or they could all just be using filters. I guess you never really know. So I'll probably try that. Sometime I'll wet my brush when I use this palette again. But dry and with a finger are pretty lackluster, so I don't know how well that bodes for a wet brush, but we'll see. So yeah, this is definitely going to be the most neutral, most boring look of all four, which is fine. I just wanted to show how you can use this palette. You may have noticed, but I'm kind of using different zones of the palette for each of these looks, which again speaks to how well she put the palette together, that there are visually apparent parts of the palette that you can focus on to create an entire cohesive look. So if you just wanted to use the top left or the middle section or the top right or the bottom left, the middle section on the bottom, and the bottom right, you can create very cohesive looks that are easy without any kind of fuss. Or of course you can go all over the place, but that's up to you. This next look, I believe, yeah, I'm going to be going into the bottom section of this palette. So I really wanted to use these shades together because of course, this is being a Morphe palette, I'm always super suspicious of their colorful shades. Now, these shades are completely matte. Any sparkles that you see on my eyelid are because I didn't fully clean off this brush. So ignore that. These are not mattes with glitters, they're mattes. And I actually was surprised at how not bad these were. These actually were pretty okay. Now, I couldn't build it up to full opacity like what I saw in the pan, as you can see, but the patchiness is pretty negligible and they built up really, really well. Now, as you can see, I am not making much of an effort to blend these. I'm going to use a lighter shade to blend these out, but so far so good. I think this corner was the one I was obviously the most worried about, but I got a good look out of it, and these shadows actually were very agreeable. Now, this shade here is called Lucid Dreams. This one is actually really unique. I don't really have a shade like this in my entire collection, maybe in one of my Nabla Cutie palettes, but other than that, this is really the first time I've stumbled across a shade like this. It feels periwinkle, but it's not very pastel, and it has a bit of a gray tinge to it. So as you can see, I'm using this to blend out the dark blue and the dark purple, and it's doing a really great job of doing that. So honestly, I was super pleased with this corner, and that blue shade is just so mysterious, so hazy. It adds a really foggy effect to the look that I think is just absolutely beautiful. So yeah, using this part of the palette made me realize that I don't want to tell you guys not to get it. I want you guys to know what you're getting into. It is a Morphe product, but I actually am quite surprised at how, not terrible these shadows were. You can obviously see some patchiness, but for being a blue and a purple eyeshadow, it surprised me. I can definitely say that I found it pretty easy to work with. Now, I was using a natural haired brush, that probably helps too, but still. This shade also, this shimmer is one of the best shimmers in this entire palette, and on top of these shades, it puts to the look a very unusual shift. Do you see on my eyelid how amazing that looks? It just adds such an unusual dimensional effect. The shade in and of itself has no real duochrome nature to it, but put on top of these shadows, it suddenly looks extremely dimensional, very shifty, and it just overall adds a very interesting element of contrast to the entire look. So those two shades next to each other, the lavender one and then Lucid Dreams, they almost make the entire palette worth it just for that, which I think is so funny. There's also some shades in this palette that are squishy, namely the shade Breathe. It feels to me really like Morphe's version of a Super Shock shadow, and that one has that Korean twinkly effect where it is not pigmented like a Super Shock shadow, it's translucent, but it's extremely sparkly and twinkly. That shade is definitely a shade that I would probably use with every single look I did with this palette. I could see if I only used this palette, I would definitely pan Breathe first because it's so pretty. So that's another standout shade I really wanted to mention. I think I used Breathe in like 3 of the looks in this video alone. I definitely used it with this one. I'm pairing off this look with a slightly purple toned lip from Romand. I definitely really want to expand my collection of purple lipsticks this year. I feel like I have none, you know, because I don't really use crazy lip colors, but lipsticks with like a purple cool tone lean to them are something I'm definitely interested in. Alright, this last final look is going to be focusing on the bottom middle section of the palette, which is a little bit more red. So I'm only using one matte base shadow, and then everything else is going to be a shimmer. So as you can see, not really too many problems with this matte. I didn't build it up to full intensity, not because it can't, but because I didn't want to. It's going to be a pretty low-key look overall, so I just kind of let it be slightly sheer. And as you can see, it's working fine, blends out really well. I didn't really find myself having to use any particular primer to make it perform better. Some of these looks I used the Makeup Revolution primer, others of these looks I used no primer whatsoever, and I really didn't think there was a problem with either one. I'm using Mood to just make sure the edges are nice and blended out, nice smooth gradation there, and it adds a bit of a pinkish tinge to the overall mood of the look. And now I'm going to finish off this look with these three shimmers, and as you can see as I apply them, these three shimmers again are showing off how disappointing I find Morphe's shimmer formula to be. They really barely show up, they feel very powdery, they don't really have much to them. Again, I was using a finger with this, I wasn't using like a wet brush or anything, but like still, I feel like most shimmers can be salvaged with a finger. Like if they perform terribly on a brush, you usually can just use your finger and you'll get a fine result. So if these only work with a wet brush, that still seems kind of weird to me too. Like, I guess, am I the only one who feels this way? So yeah, you can see it just barely shows up. So I am taking Breathe again, and I'm just going to use this to highlight my inner corners, try and just brighten everything up. And then I ended up going back into Breathe again on my finger and pop it in the middle of my upper eyelids, because I just felt like, honestly, the look otherwise was pretty flat feeling. So you can see Breathe coming in, rescuing this look for me. And then I just topped it off with some eyeliner and false lashes. I wore a pair of like supernatural false lashes for all four of these because my lash lift has pretty much faded and I didn't feel like putting on mascara. So some eyeliner definitely kind of finished off this look because otherwise it was so simple. I didn't mention the lip here because I totally chose the wrong lip color. I thought this was going to be a cooler red than it ended up being, but it wasn't. So yeah, that's this video. I hope this helped you decide if you want to get it or not. I'll see you guys very, very soon. And yeah, thanks for watching.